What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Eye on the U, the Miami Herald show about everything Miami Hurricanes. We're back after another Miami victory that lately have not been very, very common. The team has alternated victories in recent weeks, but there's good news on the horizon. They seem to still have a chance at the college football playoff. Not a great chance, but they're alive. There's a pulse. I'm Andre Fernandez, your host, joined as always by Jordan McPherson. We're here to talk a little bit about the renewed life of this program in terms of maybe, just maybe, might still be able to get. They still obviously need to win out their final 3 games, and they need a little bit of things to break their way, a few things to break their way still. But as of now, the rankings show Miami still in the mix, highest ranked ACC team in the latest college football projections. We'll talk a little bit about that. We'll recap what was, again, started as an ugly performance against Syracuse, but then caught fire in the second half in a game Miami ended up winning convincingly after all, 38-10. The momentum swing there, we'll talk a little bit about that. We'll talk about the trick plays in that game, which were pretty interesting, with Carson Beck throwing a TD, but then also catching one from Malachi Toney. Francis Magoa also has a touch. I always have trouble pronouncing his name. I'm sorry. Moiga had a rushing touchdown as well in garbage time, but still, when something like that happens, it's always fun to watch. A nice highlight there. And then the defense, of course, continues to dominate. Just 10 points allowed in this game. The one touchdown came again in garbage time. They pretty much should have held Syracuse to a field goal in the game. So we'll go over all of that, and we'll talk NC State, the last, the home finale for Miami before those 2 big road games. They also need to win. A couple guys on this NC State team familiar to South Florida fans, including that starting quarterback for the Wolfpack. And then, like I said before, we'll break down the latest CFP, look at some of Jordan, Mr. He's the numbers guy. He's got it all figured out. He's maybe almost all of it figured out.
I don't think anybody has it all figured out at this point.
Right? I don't know at all. I'm being nice to you, my friend. I think you're probably one of the people that at least dedicates himself to trying to figure out the puzzle. You've got what games people should take a look at this weekend, and a little bit of basketball talk too, as a big game looming for the improved Hurricanes men's team, which won again this week, but now faces its biggest test with the Gators. So exhale after all of that. Let's go. Let's talk about Syracuse. Let's dive in. And again, Jordan, we're sitting there. It's scoreless for over a quarter, and you're thinking, okay, at best, this is going to be Stanford all over again. At worst, are we looking at the end of the season right here? Turns out they figured it out.
Yeah, I mean, the first 4 drives were just absolutely pathetic. There's no other way to say it. They had 4 punts. I think it was about 62 yards of offense total. And again, this is against the Syracuse defense that has been one of the worst in the nation. They've given up, I think, it's about 160 points over the 5-game losing streak, or the losing streak they've had entering the game. Just bad. And then about 5 or so minutes left, Miami's pinned to their 10 in the 5 or so minutes left in the first half. They just come to life. A big pass to Keelan Marion, a 41-yard catch and run by true freshman Dalen Upshaw, another catch by Josh Moore gets him to the 15, and then the first trickery play. Toss to, or a reverse to Malachi Toney, who goes back and does a double pass to Carson Beck. Wide open. Carson Beck's just going, please just catch it. Please just catch it. Please just catch it. Catches it wide open, 14-yard touchdown. And then the momentum just carried from there. Keontae Scott with a pick 6 to put him up 14-0 with about 90 seconds left. And then Syracuse again marches down the field, gets into the red zone. Looks like they're about to score to make it back a 1-score game. And then they get the ball back to start the second half. And Akeem Mesidor just rips the ball out of the quarterback's hand. Jacoby Thomas recovers it. So that saved a potential 7-point swing there and kept all the energy on Miami's sideline going into halftime. Those 2 big turnovers by the defense were huge. And then the offense just kept everything going. They scored on all but 1 drive the rest of the way. All 3 drives in the third quarter to go up. It was 31-0, 31-3 at that point. And then they just had to coast in the fourth quarter until they finally decide, you know what? Francis Malinoa, we've been working on this play for 3 years. Let's finally give it to you. They backwards pass from Carson Beck to Malinoa, runs into the end zone, make it 38-0. You may notice he wasn't completely excited when he got into the end zone. And when we asked him about it, he said, and I quote, yeah, the touchdown was nice, But I wanted to hit someone on my way in there. It was like,
Struck somebody. He wanted to make that highlight, and apologies for butchering the name earlier. Yeah, but it was a great highlight. I mean, even
yes.
you're right. If he had that battering ram moment going in at the goal line, it would have been even cooler. But hey, maybe there's an opportunity in these last few games of the season to try this again at some point when catch somebody off guard. You never
Yeah,
know.
no doubt about it. And again, he said they ran that play base probably 40 to 50 times in practice over his 3 years here. And
Yeah.
Shannon Dawson said it just takes the right set of circumstances. They have to be on the right hash mark.
Yeah,
Defense has to be in
perfect
the right
storm of
alignment. You have to
right.
have everything working right. And you kind of need Inez Cooper yelling at you saying, okay, it's time to run that damn play. And when Inez Cooper's yelling, you listen because
Right.
he's going to keep yelling until something happens.
Right.
So kudos to Inez Cooper for making it happen. Kudos to Carson Beck for getting him a catchable pass. And kudos to Maui Noah for getting in there. And then just, again, that was the icing on the cake. But throughout the whole thing, this defense, just, man, again, what a difference a year makes. What a difference a new defensive coordinator makes. Like Andre said, the top only 10 points allowed, and the touchdown came with 20 seconds left. Miami was already up by 35. They put their backups in and give them a couple drives of experience in there. But overall in the game, 7 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, 3 turnovers. All those numbers are basically things. The 3 turnovers they've done the second time this year. The 7 sacks, if I remember correctly, it's the first time since 2019 that they've had 7 sacks in the game. That's a long time, especially with the history of defensive linemen and pressure that Miami's been able to have over the years. That's a big number.
Well,
and they're ranked among the top 11 nationally in points allowed per game, yards allowed per game, third down conversions, and they're tied for 18th in total turnovers forced. This is a championship caliber defense. If only they can have the offense stay consistent enough on the other side of it.
The team, it's basically flipped from last season completely. But the unfortunate part is it didn't seem like a flip the first few weeks. It seemed like you finally had the balanced team you were looking for that could contend for a national title. So where's that team been? We've only seen it in little bits here and there. You know, even in the losses, one drive here, one drive there, but it just hasn't sustained itself for a full 4 quarters, probably since, I don't know, maybe the first half against FSU, maybe.
Yeah,
I mean,
the first 3 quarters, ever since the 4th quarter against FSU, that's where the offensive inconsistency sort of popped out. Because again, that 4th quarter, FSU scored 19 points. The offense punted or turned over on downs every drive of the 4th quarter, which allowed FSU to get back in it. UM was luckily up enough to withstand the comeback bid, but Louisville they fell flat early and then routed, and then came back, I should say, before everything collapsed at the end. Stanford, they struggled early and then routed. SMU was good early and then rough late. And then this week was rough early, fantastic at the end. So again, it's a matter of 4 full quarters or build up enough of a lead so that you're good enough where you can start experimenting with stuff in the 4th quarter like they were able to do on Saturday against Syracuse. But like you said, since that 4th quarter against Florida State, it hasn't all been there all the time.
Yeah, it just hasn't clicked consistently for an entire game the way we were seeing early on with Miami. But I mean, there's still time. I mean, that's the thing. They if they can get this going somehow down the stretch, and they're going to have to, because this NC State team, just on paper, I mean, they've struggled with their own issues of staying consistent throughout the season. They had a 4 out of 5 loss stretch there for a little bit, but then did they ever bounce back 2 weeks ago against Georgia Tech with a huge victory over the previously unbeaten Yellow Jackets at that point? They have this is a dangerous team that Miami will face. I know people are thinking of Pitt at the end of the season. They're kind of scoffing at Virginia Tech, even though that's the historic rival of this team, especially at Blacksburg. It's always tough. This game, though, I know it's at home, but do not underestimate this team if you're Miami, because this team, like I said, they beat Georgia Tech. They have a win over Virginia. They beat a Wake Forest team that was in the mix, sort of hanging around until the other day, and had its own set of good wins this season. I mean, this is a solid ball club. And CJ Bailey, who we know, who I covered a bunch of times at Chaminade, has really come into his own there for the Wolfpack. He's one of the top passers in the ACC. This is not going to be easy, and Miami is still pretty banged up, and I know you're going to discuss that a little bit. Mark Fletcher looking like he's not going to play again. but they may get some pieces back though, and you got a chance to talk to them to talk to Coach Cristobal and the coordinators earlier this week. What they say about the injuries?
Yeah, so with the injuries, Mark Fletcher is looking like he's going to be doubtful, which means there'll be the trio of Jordan Lyle, Marty Brown, and Gerard Pringle. Shout out to him. I mean, third quarter, 2 big runs, get some one of their touchdowns late in the third quarter, had 55 yards and 7 carries. He has that burst and explosiveness that we haven't seen much from the run game that often. And when I was looking at the numbers, they have 5 runs of more than 20 yards this season. 5. Pringle on his first 2 runs went 11 and 19. Same exact play, shotgun, hand off from Beck, Pringle's to his right, and just goes to the left and was able to just break past the defense both times. So if they can get some more, if they can give him a little bit more consistent playing time, I'll be interested to see what he's able to do. All right, so that's the run game. CJ Daniels is looking likely that he could return. No guarantee, but he seems the most optimistic of the guys returning is him returning. And linebacker Wesley Besaint was very limited against Syracuse. He only played, I think, 13 snaps. So they ended up rotating Raul Popo Aguirre and Chase Smith into his spot opposite Motore. So, but Mario Cristobal said that he's anticipating Wesley Besaint being full go. The other 2 guys, cornerback OJ Frederic and defensive lineman Ahmad Moten, are in quote-unquote wait-and-see mode. I feel more optimistic about Moten than Frederic just simply because during pregame warmups on Saturday, OJ Frederic was basically bandaged up with his left wrist. So his left wrist, left arm. So he had a cast, I should say. That's the word I was looking for. Sorry, it's early. It's early. Ready. But he had a cast on his arm.
At least you're not butchering last names like I am. So don't worry about it. You're fine.
Yeah, luckily I practiced a few of those names I know I'll need to beforehand, so had that time. But anyway, but yeah, so they're banged up, but the blessing in disguise there is they've seen some guys stepping up. At receiver, Keelan Murray in these last 2 weeks, close to 200 receiving yards, had a beautiful 61-yard catch and run touchdown against Syracuse. We knew that he's an explosive play guy, especially in the kickoff, in the return game. Haven't had a chance to see much there because, well, kickoffs really haven't been happening. But we'll finally see it happening in the passing game with him. Again, about 200 or so yards over the last 2 games against Syracuse and SMU. Hopefully that's something he can build on from there. Galen Upshaw, JoJo Trader, Josh Moore getting a little more run in the receiving game in addition to the dude who does everything that is Malachi Tony. So they're starting to see some more weapons there. The run game, like I mentioned with Gerard Pringle. At cornerback with Frederic out, Damari Brown has really stepped up a lot, which is good to see because, again, he missed basically all of last season with injury and came to this season wanting to prove that he could be who the Hurricanes thought he was when they signed him. And he's stepping up. The numbers don't really stand out in terms of the pure numbers, tackles, takeaways, all that, but his coverage numbers and his coverage grading by Pro Football Focus grades out really high. And him with Xavier Lucas and with Ethan O'Connor have made a great trio with Frederic out. And then on the defensive line, Justin Scott has stepped up again. Again, he was a 5-star recruit from their 2024 class, and he's just finally stepped up. He had 2 tackles for losses and has worked really well with David Blay the last couple of weeks. So to see that group sort of building on that depth that we knew was there, but was just inexperienced and young, and to see them getting the reps is going to be beneficial for them in the long run, whether it's the rest of this season or just getting those physical reps going into next season when they're going to be needed, when David Blay's gone, when Ahmad Moten's gone, when all these other big guys are gone. Knowing that they have the experience going into next season is going to be critical.
One side note that one of my favorite things in recent days that was kind of funny was hearing all the chatter and the whispers of, oh my God, like Malachi could throw well and this and that. I'm like, you guys must have missed it when he kind of, played quarterback as a kid and then, came back and did a little something for American Heritage last year by playing quarterback for 3 games. And I'm not talking, caretaker. No, like bombs downfield. And this kid can play quarterback if he played quarterback in high school a little bit last year. The reason Heritage won the state title. So it's interesting because,
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, no, just a fun fact. A fun fact on that note. Mario Cristobal said the reason they were able to run that trick play with him throwing the back was because American Heritage has similar play in their playbook. And Malachi Tony had reps before coming here doing something similar.
Do that. Right.
So it kind of goes hand in hand with that.
It's great because you have, I mean, obviously he's playing wide receiver and it's primary. That's what we want. But it gives Miami a little bit of, you might be able to throw, maybe not just that one, but they probably have a couple of wrinkles, a couple of things in their playbook that are possible thanks to that ability. So another cool little asset to have from Malachi Tony, who's just been such a tremendous story this year in college football, not just down here, but nationwide, as one of, if not the best freshman in the country this season. And, just going into this week, he's going to have to make plays again because, like I said before, this Wolfpack team, Jordan, I don't know if you want to give your thoughts a little bit on what Miami's facing, but, Bailey, we saw him at Chaminade and now thriving. He's a tall kid, has been able to really take over that offense. He's one of the top. He's ranked in the top 5 in passing in more than one category, I know, right now in the ACC this season. And the reason that the Wolfpack look like a bowl team this year and pretty much a wrecking ball to a lot of teams that are still in contention for the conference title, including Miami.
Yeah, CJ Bailey's been absolutely great this year. His numbers, he's completing 70.7% of his passes, 2,400 yards, 19 touchdowns. 7 interceptions. Miami's going to try to exploit that a bit, but their run game on top of it has been absolutely fantastic. Hollywood Smothers, who's their main guy, was a fantastic name, hands down. Was dominant as a freshman last year, if I remember correctly. Yeah, he led them in rushing yards last year. This year, 825 yards, 6 touchdowns, averaging just shy of 7 yards a rush. But he got hurt in the Pitt game, didn't play against Georgia Tech. Everyone thought, okay, there goes their run game, right? Not so much, because they have a freshman behind him named Jaden Scott, who only ran for 200 yards in that game against Georgia Tech. So, one guy who's averaging 7 yards a rush goes down. Now they have another guy who's averaging 6 yards a rush to fill in for him. Another guy, young, fresh legs. So Miami's front seven is going to be put up to a massive test on Saturday against that game, that run game, plus what CJ Bailey's able to do in the pass game. They have a few guys on defense. Sebastian Hart, your defensive lineman, and linebacker Caden Forum leading them in tackles for loss with 7 apiece. They have a few guys who can who are pretty turnover happy. They have some guys who can make plays happen. It's going to be, again, Miami's going to be favored going in, but this is not one that, like we said at the top, don't overlook this team because, again, they beat Georgia Tech 2 weeks ago. They were off last week. So they're coming off the momentum, the high of beating Georgia Tech. Plus, they had an extra week to prepare for this Miami team. So It's going to be they have some extra resources at their disposal in terms of extra practice reps, extra time to get healthy and get ready for what's going to be their biggest game of the season, and I guess you can say the biggest game for Miami at this point because it's the next one of a must-win game.
We're in that ladder where it's the next game is the biggest game, and then so on and so on.
The most important game because it's the next one.
Because it's the next one. The cliche is front and center now for the rest of the season. That's the predicament Miami's put itself in by losing those 2 games. But anyway, let's talk about that because if anyone watched or has seen it in the time since then and watching this show, Miami jumped up to 15 in the latest CFP, and because of the fact that nobody in the ACC wanted to go undefeated, they are now ahead of everybody, including Georgia Tech. Now, take that with a grain of salt. Right now, that looks nice, but obviously 3 weeks to go. Miami has to win all 3, like we said. Things have to happen a certain way because right now, people are probably getting excited when they saw, hey, they're 15th, and then there's that little footnote that says, right now, they'd be the 11th seed in the playoffs. So right at this particular moment, they're in. But that probably won't stay that way if certain things don't happen. And that's going beyond just winning the final 3 games. Yeah. Jordan, if you want to take it from here, you came up with a very good list that people should check out at MiamiHerald.com. It's pretty much Jordan came up with a weekend guide of how many games affect potentially Miami. which ones you kind of need to root for. We can go over it one at a time. I don't know if we want to go over first the rankings situation.
Yeah, definitely want to go over the rankings. And just to give the clarity to touch on what Andre said, yes, Miami is 15. Yes, if you watch the ESPN ranking show, you saw them at the number 11 seed on that playoff field. Do not listen to that. Because, and here is the big disclaimer, parameter, everything you know about that. Up until the conference championship games are played, the committee's rankings just simply take the highest ranked team as each conference as the assumed conference champion. Miami would be the 11 seed in this scenario at number 15 if they were the ACC champion, if they made it to the conference title game in Charlotte on December 6th, a game that I don't know if I have to remind you guys, Miami is technically still far and away from even getting to because of the fact that they have 2 conference losses and there are 5 teams in the conference with only 1 loss.
Right.
So that number 11 seeding on there, it's misleading. I'm just going to say it as simple as possible. It's misleading.
A game that would still take possibly a brain exploding tiebreaker of 2 lost teams for Miami to get in, but go ahead.
Exactly. And I will gladly give a couple of the very summarized forms of how Miami can get there momentarily. But that said, the fact that the committee moved Miami up 3 spots and moved them up over a 1-loss ACC team in Georgia Tech, that gives you a better feel about how they regard Miami. Granted, I think the fact that USF got moved into the ranks in number 24, that only helps Miami because it gives them another quote-unquote ranked win, because now they have Notre Dame and USF as ranked wins on the resume for this week. Who knows? USF could drop out. Miami then has 1 ranked win, and the committee goes, oh, they only have 1 ranked win on their schedule, and just keep deciding what narrative they want to do. But for the time being, they are valuing those 2 wins specifically for Miami over the rest of the ACC because the ACC really has no out-of-conference marquee wins. They really don't. Miami's wins over Notre Dame and USF are what are carrying it right now in the rankings. Those 2 losses still hurt, but the fact that nobody else in the conference has a marquee non-conference victory is working in Miami's favor in terms of the rankings.
Right.
But with that, just the quick summation, there's still a handful of 2-loss teams above Miami in the rankings. Notre Dame, obviously, they're at number 9. Let me just pull up the full rankings. I know I'm going to mix some of these rankings up.
Yeah, and Notre Dame is like which we'll get into when we go over the games to watch this weekend. But Notre Dame's kind of like the catch-22 team because it's like you don't want Notre Dame to fall too much to keep that value of victory, but they're in your way. So that's
So number 9 Notre Dame, number 10 Texas, number 11 Oklahoma, number 13 Utah, and number 14 Vanderbilt are the 5 2-loss teams ranked ahead of Miami.
Which Vanderbilt just barely survived this past weekend, too.
Vanderbilt barely squeaked in to stay where they're at, which, again, Vanderbilt and Utah are the only 2 that I'm questioning about how they're ahead of Miami. Vanderbilt, and I actually have Vanderbilt's breakdown on here. Vanderbilt has no ranked wins at this point. And again, they lost to Texas. They lost a couple other of their more notable games. But them and Utah has the losses to TCU and BYU, and they have a win over Cincinnati, who's number 25 in the poll. That's their resume.
Right.
So they're getting the credit for losing for the 2 quality losses.
Right.
But anyway, with all of that, just a quick rundown of the big games.
Let's go through this here real quick. Friday, Clemson at Louisville. Miami needs to root for Clemson. Insert the Miami fans barfing at this concept, but hey, Jordan, go ahead.
It's a 2-pronged approach there. A Louisville loss gives them 3 on the season, and again, still no marquee non-conference win. So 3rd loss basically takes them out of both the ACC contention for the ACC championship and the CFP.
Yeah. So that one Friday, ESPN 7:30. Check that out. Then now let's go to Saturday. Let's start with the noon game, which I think this is the one that could cure the Notre Dame problem right here. It's Notre Dame number 9 against number 22 Pittsburgh. As we know, Miami has to face Pittsburgh anyway, so that has to be a win at the end of the season. Now, this is where, and I'm sure that's what you're going to explain in depth, this is where it could happen. If Pittsburgh beats Notre Dame, gets them out of the way, but it's Pittsburgh. It's not some unranked nobody, so it probably won't hurt Notre Dame as badly. That would affect the value of that victory either.
And it would also benefit Miami if Miami's able to beat a Pitt team that beat Notre Dame.
Exactly.
So it's a multi-pronged thing.
It's almost like that value of victory
Yeah.
either trades places or even doubles, really,
Yes.
in a sense.
Yeah,
So
because exactly. So, and the thing is, when you look at the rest of Notre Dame's schedule, they have Pitt this week, then they're home against Syracuse, and they're at Stanford.
Stanford, I was going to say, they always play Stanford toward the end of the season.
Yeah. So if you look at it, Saturday's more than likely the last chance.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah. It's probably out of all these scoreboard watching games, I dare to say that if it's not the most critical one left, it's right up there.
Hands down.
For sure.
In terms of the direct impact for Miami, this is the biggest one of them. And luckily, it can be your perfect appetizer before watching UM-NC State on Saturday, because UM-NC State's a 3:30 game. So go from Notre Dame Pittsburgh right into your UM viewing. But if you have a multi-screen, we have, I believe, 3 or 4 games. We have 2 games at 3:30.
We have a few games at 3:30. Before you do, everybody put their Pitt jerseys on. Dig up your old Dan Marino Pitt jerseys if you want.
And unfortunately, if you have YouTube TV, find another outlet to be able to get your multi-view purposes, or basically any viewing this week.
I know some people that fell victim to that unfortunate circumstance.
Yeah,
but,
me.
But, yeah.
Thankfully, my brother has DirecTV, and I'm mooching off his DirecTV stream until all this gets resolved.
Well, a lot of people that'll remain nameless mooch off of you, so it's all fair. It's all fair. So okay, I'm gonna tee these up for you. Oklahoma, number 11 at Alabama. Alabama 3:30, ABC. Alabama hasn't stopped winning since that FSU loss. What needs to happen here?
Yeah, honestly, just keep winning, Alabama, especially with Oklahoma. They're one of the 2 loss teams ahead of Miami. A loss here would give them 3 losses. And just looking at their strength of schedule, their big wins are number 18 Michigan, number 21 Tennessee. Tennessee is a 3-loss team. Michigan is going to be an interesting one. We'll be touching on them in a little bit as well, or probably we'll be touching on them later in the year with their big game against Ohio State to end the season. But if they lose, their 3 losses will be the Texas by 17 points, Ole Miss by 12 points, and if they lose this one by double digits as well, yes, it's 3 losses to 3 ranked teams, but 3 double-digit losses sort of puts a damper on anything else, regardless of how you try to shake it out with the strength of schedule.
Yeah. Also at 3:30, ESPN 2, number 19 Virginia against Manny Diaz's Duke Blue Devils. This one is interesting too when it comes to not just the playoff, but the ACC. Miami trying to squeeze through the log jam in there and get into the title game.
Yeah, so a 4-loss Duke team still has a chance to make the ACC championship game. That's just, I'm still processing that, but hey, when you're in the all chaos conference, who the heck knows?
You know what? To have the Mario Manny matchup, that would be worth the chaos and the headache of trying to figure it out.
Yeah, and since you brought that up, let's just go through. There is a path for that, and that is simply Miami wins out, Duke wins out, and Duke after Virginia has, I believe it's NC State and UNC, or it's UNC and Wake Forest, something like that. They play 2 North Carolina teams. I remember that much. But the 2 of them win out their schedules. Clemson beats Louisville this week, which is what we've talked about already. If Pitt beats Georgia Tech next week and Louisville beats SMU next week, both of which could happen, we would be looking at a Miami-Duke ACC championship game because of all the different tiebreaker scenarios and whatnot. Duke would be
football, ladies and gentlemen, not basketball.
Yeah, and it's UNC and Wake Forest for Duke down after this. So if they beat Virginia, which Duke is a 5.5-point favorite entering that game because Virginia, maybe without their quarterback, he got hurt last week in their game last week. So there's a possibility. But that also brings up the interesting dynamic of just one last reminder with how the CFP picks its teams. The 5 auto bids are the 5 highest ranked conference champions, not the 4 Power 4 conference champions in the top group of 5, the top 5 ranked conference champions. So if Duke, a 4-loss Duke team, wins the ACC, there is a potential for 2 group of 5 teams to get auto bids.
That's good news for USF.
So it gets to the point of, could it be beneficial if Miami misses the ACC championship game, Duke beats someone for the ACC championship game, and yet Miami is somehow the only ACC team in?
That's
because
crazy.
Yeah, it's just, again, chaos, all that. That said, a Duke win over Virginia would be beneficial for this game. Just again, well, I mean, either way, one of them's gonna have 2 losses. But Virginia being ranked, just if you can knock them out, and it's one less team to potentially worry about creeping up behind you.
I don't
Potentially
know.
the extra avenue.
Yeah, look, this is the extreme scenario, but again, let's say we're in that position. Nothing of any college football ranking system going back to the BCS days surprises me anymore. The way they can just, figure out a certain way that just like leaves everybody, either super pissed or wondering what the heck just happened. Yeah. So you never know. I think, it could happen. That'd be funny. That would be pretty funny.
We have a month left. We know there's going to be some sort of.
Yeah, this is going to be all.
The ACC is imploding on itself already, but
it already is.
What shoe drops outside of the ACC that's going to add the extra wrinkles.
Well, these last 3 are all outside the ACC, like you just said. On the night side, Utah, you're shouldn't be there. Utah at Baylor, 7:00 on ESPN2.
Yeah. So again, Baylor is the team you should be rooting for there. Again, if it gives Utah a 3rd loss, you want that to happen. And Utah's remaining schedule is this game at Baylor, home against Kansas State, and at Kansas. Right. This feels like probably the biggest game they have left on that docket to get that 3rd loss.
And now you have the doozy in the SEC. Another big one is there's always a huge one in the SEC every week. At number 10, Texas. At number 5, Georgia. I'm thinking kind of like Alabama. You want the Bulldogs to be that battering ram of all these teams that Miami needs out of the way, right?
Yeah, exactly. Again, the top 5 basically, as long as Ohio State 1, Indiana 2, A&M 3, Bama 4, Georgia 5. Barring something completely unforeseen, those 5 are all going to be in. So you don't want them to have an upset loss late and then it just end up muddling things up where a team behind Miami or a team on the bubble with Miami gets another quality win and basically furthers their resume. So if the top 5, top 6 are able to just hold chalk the rest of the way and end up knocking some of the teams that Miami's competing with out in the process, all the better.
And then the last one, if you stay up late and you're still bitter about that opening season loss in 1990, there's your old moment, Jordan. TCU at number 12, BYU, 10:15, ESPN. I'm going to guess the Horned Frogs are the Miami favorite team on this one.
That is correct. Again, BYU lost last week to Texas Tech, got their first loss, and pretty embarrassing one. I mean, they're getting shut out until I think the 4th quarter at that point. And they are, of the one-loss teams, they're easily the most fragile of the one-loss teams. So if TCU is able to win it, or whoever BYU faces the rest of the way is able to give them a second loss, it definitely benefits Miami. And BYU schedule the rest of the way. They're hosting TCU this week. They're at Cincinnati, who is ranked now this next week, and then they finish against UCF. So their schedule, they have some opportunities to slip up here down the stretch, which they fall in any one of those that benefits Miami.
There you go. Well, that was fun. There you have it. I'm sure not as fun as watching all the games will be this weekend. And Jordan, I think you're planning on assuming Miami stays in the fight week to week, Jordan will have something like this, a bit of a roadmap for everybody out there.
Yeah, as long as Miami is still in contention for the playoffs, I will have this, and then after,
not, no point.
and then after games and on Saturday, I'm going to continue the weekly where Miami stands in the ACC until either things get sorted out when Miami is completely knocked out of the picture, or unless there is a loss down the stretch.
Well, and let's wrap this puppy up by talking a little hoops. This UM basketball team, it's early. I know they haven't even stopped playing in-state teams yet. They haven't played a power conference team yet, but has looked impressive. This turnaround, this roster overhaul under Jai Lucas is now at 3-0 after a convincing victory over Stetson. They started off a little sluggish the first few minutes of the game, but then they got it going. This team, their size is impressive, and Malik Renault's at the heart of that effort. Had a great game. We're gonna have a story on him coming up this week at MiamiHerald.com by our basketball writer Michelle Kaufman. We'll have to have Michelle on the show at some point down the road to talk a little more in depth about this team and the women's team, which is also off to a good start. But Jordan, Miami against Florida, another big game on Sunday night in Jacksonville, neutral site, and the Gators kind of haven't started too well by their standards. Coming off the national title, had a tough one that they squeaked by against FSU earlier this week. You know, that it's an intriguing matchup. Can Miami already match up with a team that won the national title last year that's kind of trying to find its own way.
Yeah, no, and I watched the UF FSU game on Tuesday night, and FSU gave them every punch that they possibly could. I mean, UF is just, it comes down to their experience is just unmatched. I mean, they return three of their big guys in the front court. They've got Alex Condon, Ruben Chindaloo, Micah Handloglin, Alex Condon. All those guys were fantastic parts of that national championship run. And then they beefed up their backcourt with Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee, a couple big transfers. So they have a lot of talent, but I know we mentioned that Miami really hasn't played anyone yet, but I do want to point out their win over Bethune-Cookman. They beat Bethune-Cookman 101-61. Bethune-Cookman took Auburn to overtime to start the season.
Yes.
So, yes, on paper, you don't really think about that game, but considering what they did to a ranked Auburn team, that's a pretty good early season measuring stick to know that you're able to beat a team by 40 that a ranked team was only able to beat by 5 in overtime at home. So Florida is Bethune-Cookman obviously is not Florida, but that is essentially a feel-good game to be able to say for Miami, hey, we got 100 points in back-to-back games, regardless of who the opponents are. It's something you need that type of momentum entering a game like this.
And two things to note there, not just the 101 against Bethune. They also surpassed 100 against Stetson.
Yeah.
And that's the first time since 1989. We're talking just barely after the program was resurrected after that 14-year hiatus they had when the team was not good at all. Trust me, like another old moment. I remember watching them in those days. And so it shows you the scoring punch that this team has, be it against who it may so far. And another thing they're doing, Reggie Theus is the coach, former NBA great Reggie Theus is the coach at Bethune-Cookman. He was very complimentary and saying, he flat out was saying Miami is better than Auburn, and like noticeably. And he called them a turn. Now, granted, you hear that from coaches sometimes after, especially early in the season, making their projections. But I feel like a few years ago, when Miami made the Final Four, you heard that same talk at the beginning of the season, and people weren't saying necessarily they were a Final Four team, but people were talking about them being at least capable of making a run to it, and look what happened. So maybe the feedback, there's something to it. Again, it's very early, but I do like the fact that also, look, this team last year probably would have struggled to beat a Stetson, period. Forget about beating them by the amount that they did. And they're getting a lot of their players in the game, which is what you hope to have with these tune-up games. I mean, everybody down the bench is getting in. The freshmen, everybody. Trey Donaldson's played great. You know, the Dante Allens are getting in the game and playing impactful minutes. Yeah, it's a good start all the way around.
Yeah, hands down, they're getting stuff from just about everybody. I mean, like I said, Malik Renaud's averaging 21 points a game. Trey Donaldson's averaging 16. They got 4 guys averaging double figures. Ernest Uda is one that I'm high on right now. Again, he's just shy of averaging a double-double through the first 3 games. 8.7 points and 9 rebounds per game through the first 3. That's, again, you mentioned the size. The size is going to be their size, and what they're able to do in the paint and inside is going to be critical for them this season.
Yeah, for sure. And it will continue to be something interesting to watch with this team. We'll be back next week to talk more football, obviously, primarily, but we'll keep an eye on this on the basketball teams and how they're doing. Again, like we said, they play the Gators on Sunday, and then they turn around with another quote-unquote tune-up game, you would think, after that against Elon. But Miami has some tough ones early in the season before they hit that ACC schedule, so it'll be interesting to see the evolution of this team under Jay Lucas in his first season. Until then, for Jordan McPherson, I'm Andre Fernandez. Thank you, as always, for watching Eye on the U. Remember to catch us on YouTube and at MiamiHerald.com, and follow all of Jordan's work at MiamiHerald.com. And we'll see you next week.